Good
morning, Chair, board members. A few housekeeping rules in order to minimize background information. Please silence all your cell phones and other electronic devices. Mute your speakers and microphones, etc., unless you're speaking. Because this is a virtual meeting, we take a formal roll call. Please respond present or here. Chair Ross.
Here.
Board Member Adams.
Here.
Thank you. Board Member Gavin.
Here, present.
Board Member Gavin, please respond.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Gewolb.
Present, thank you.
Paula. Thank you. Board Member Gonzalez. Member Gonzalez.
Present. Present.
Thank you. Thank you. Board Member Young is not yet on. The General Manager is not present today. Thank you for that. Chair, there are no members of the public wishing to provide comments. As such, we may proceed with the regular calendar. The first order of business is which to adopt the minutes of the regular meeting, which was held on July 29th, 2020. Do I have a motion? Please ID your name.
Paula Gavin, so moved.
Thank you.
Gonzalez, second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you. We will now proceed with the reports section of the agenda. Chair, would you like to provide any comments or remarks in general?
I'm going to be very brief. I just want to let the board know that we continue to roll out our blueprint plan documents. We are briefing a whole range of individuals and groups on the blueprint, so that is ongoing, and we'll continue to do that through the process as it evolves, as we get the legislation to Albany, and there's a process up there for creating the housing trust, and we'll apprise the board of that once the bills are introduced. The second thing is that we're also continuing to brief lots of folks on the reorganization, the transformation plan, which we're going to do an update on today for the board, but that also is being shared in wider and wider circles as we start to develop our thinking around that document. I'll propose to the board that next month, at some point, we'll probably have a meeting devoted perhaps just to the transformation plan document, the reorganization, so we have a chance to preview this to the board, show you what's included, go over the table of contents, keeping in mind we have a end of October deadline that's been agreed to with the monitor that we're working towards. So we'll have some information session or actual either a portion of a meeting or a special meeting to review that document so the board understands what's being proposed and what's included in that. That is subject to monitor review. It will not be a final document. It'll be our draft submission to the monitor in the Southern District. With that, I'm going to stop, and then we could go into the scheduled reports for today.
Terrific. Chair, I was advised that, I know that the reports, both the transformation plan and the other reports, were provided to the board members in advance, and that the presenter would be able to answer questions. However, is Eva going to actually make a presentation with respect to the transformation plan today?
That was my understanding.
Yes,
Okay.
today we'll give a preview.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll have the transformation plan update by Eva Trimble.
Thank you. I'm Eva Trimble, Executive Vice President for Strategy and Innovation, and I'll be joined today in this presentation by Arvind Sahoni, Senior Director of Strategic Planning. I think you've all received the presentation in advance, but it's up on your screen as well today for those of you watching in. We're excited to present today the draft transformation plan. As Chairman Russ said, we are working to continue to refine this plan over the next month in anticipation of a submission to the Monitor, HUD, and Southern District on October 30th. Next slide. The transformation plan or organizational strategy is one of 3 strategies that we're looking at right now to address NYCHA's challenges. As Chairman Russ mentioned, we're continuing to have conversations about the stabilization strategy, which involves capitalization requests to fully rehab our properties in a more substantial way. The organizational strategy that we're going to be talking about today is focused on our operations as an organization. This is the plan that is required in the HUD agreement, and we'll talk more about that. And finally, the last strategy is around jobs recovery as it relates to the stabilization strategy. When we're successful in leveraging additional capital for our properties, we want to make sure that our residents are able to take opportunities from that as well. And so we're looking at strengthening Section 3 and MWBE programs as part of this overall strategy. Next slide. So the organizational strategy is mentioned in the HUD agreement. We're calling it a transformation plan here because we believe the organizational changes and business process strategies that we've developed will really have a transformative effect on our residents' quality of life. Since the 2019 HUD agreement, we've come up with some guiding principles that have helped our thinking around the organizational change. These guiding principles are developed from the agreement requirements for very specific performance goals. NYCHA is required to meet performance requirements in 6 different pillar areas, as you know: heat, lead, elevators, pest and waste, mold, and inspections. And in order to meet those performance requirements, NYCHA needs to change, and those guiding principles are something we'll talk about in a minute. Since last year, when we started the transformation planning efforts, we started talking with residents, employees, and other stakeholders, and distilled from those conversations a set of key values. These are themes that kept emerging from the conversations in regards to pain points within NYCHA, areas that we needed to look at. And so together, these guiding principles and key values represent the changes that we're going to talk about today. Next slide. So the guiding principles. Based on the obligations of the HUD agreement, we've identified 5 organizational principles. They are that NYCHA must change the way we do business by implementing new policies and procedures across our portfolio. NYCHA must be nimble enough to respond quickly to the conditions at the properties. NYCHA will monitor itself to ensure quality at the point of service. NYCHA will take on and deliver large-scale projects. And finally, NYCHA must establish clear management structures so individuals can be measured against these defined goals. So these are what we distilled from the agreement, and we've used these principles to think about how NYCHA must change and how we must change our organizational structure to achieve these. Next slide. As I mentioned in our conversations with stakeholders, when we wanted to make sure, number one, that this plan reflects both residents and employees' needs from NYCHA. And so we developed a new mission statement that better reflects the values of this plan. And NYCHA's mission now is to provide quality housing for New Yorkers that is sustainable, inclusive, and safe while fostering opportunities for economic mobility. And as we go through the plan in more detail over the next month, you'll see how some of these values come into some of the suggestions and recommendations that we're making on how NYCHA will change. But on the next slide, we'll go through 2 examples of how this impacts residents. We've been thinking about the impact of residents' life starting at the property. All of the organizational changes that we've developed have really developed from the ground up. We want to change the resident's life starting at the property and build an organization around that. So here are 2 examples that we want to highlight. The first is alternative work schedules, which is a program that was put in place a little over a year ago with the intent of having improved cleaning of buildings and grounds all week long, a longer service for our residents. However, over the past year, we've seen the program, we've seen success and challenges in the implementation of the program. And so we wanted to evaluate the program to make sure that we have the right resource allocation across all of our properties. We're working with an organization right now on new recommendations for how to better implement alternative work schedules to have the same results and impact on our residents. We want to make sure that the original intent is actually materialized for this program. Another area that we're looking to improve is property-based budgeting. Property-based budgeting will give property managers more control over their budgets. We'll be starting with some line items in what we call the OTPS budget, which would include equipment, contractors, things like that. And we believe that this will allow property managers to respond more quickly to building conditions as they see them. It will give them ownership over their properties in a different way, knowing that they can actually make the budget modifications they need directly rather than waiting for downtown or 250 to make a change in their budget for them. We think this empowerment really represents a new NYCHA, and so it will be something that residents will be able to easily see the impact of every day at their sites. Next slide. The organizational changes that we're outlining in the plan include changes to NYCHA's board and executive management structure, changes to NYCHA's property portfolios and property operations, and changes to how the central office functions to support those property operations. In order to take us through some of the property changes that we're going to be talking about, I'll transfer the presentation over to Arvind Sahoni to talk more about the neighborhood model. Next slide.
Perfect. Thank you, Eva. So I want to focus on some of the operational changes that we're proposing here. So right now we're operating 6 different management boroughs, right? So Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island together, and then mixed finance and NGO one as functional overlays that sit across the city and have developments across the city. We want to move back to 4 purely geographic boroughs. Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, moving all existing mixed finance and NGO developments into their massive geographies again.
Can someone please mute that extra noise so that I can hear the presenter? Thank you.
Thanks. So once we're able to move back to 4 geographic boroughs, we then want to actually break the boroughs up into 30 contextual neighborhoods, right? And so these neighborhoods will be about 4,000 to 7,000 units apiece. Right now, this level is the regional asset manager. There's 21 of them. They have about 8,000 units apiece. So it's going to be a smaller portfolio for each of the people at this level, led by a neighborhood director. So existing RAMs become this new neighborhood director role. And the job is going to change a little bit too. So in drawing the lines of the neighborhoods, we're trying to prioritize proximity and geography, trying to draw the tightest possible lines around developments to make it very, very clear we want someone to really understand these neighborhoods. We're also accounting for workload, trying to avoid having any one portfolio that's particularly difficult or challenging for one person to manage. Here's why we think this will help performance. So first of all, getting eyes on the buildings. We don't have enough supervisory staff seeing conditions every single day. And we think having this neighborhood director and the neighborhood office really strengthen our ability to actually have people seeing it and then reacting to it and fixing conditions much more quickly. Right now, especially in the mixed finance portfolio, there are RAMs that are covering huge parts of the city. One RAM at the moment covers sites in Lower Manhattan, Staten Island, and Canarsie. And to drive between those sites in one day is about 2 hours on a good day, honestly. 2 hours just in the car to see those sites in one day. We think having tighter neighborhoods allows someone to see all of their sites in one day and actually allows for the expectation that they see every site in one day. That's become part of the job going forward, will be to actually do that versus sort of sitting in the borough office as they are most of the time today. Secondly, we think having this strong neighborhood director role will offer a much deeper understanding of the neighborhood needs and challenges, the specific neighborhood needs and challenges. So the needs in Brownsville or Canarsie or East Harlem or Lower East Side or Bed-Stuy are all different. The needs are different, the buildings are different, the residents are different. We have to adapt our offering as an authority to those needs and be able to customize what we're offering to the neighborhood and what's actually being asked of us. We think having someone in that role whose job it is to understand those specific challenges and needs will allow us to really customize what we're doing here. No more one size fits all, no more sort of blanket formula driven approach to how we manage things, really customizing the offering for everyone. Third, increased connectivity between developments. When we have a lot of sites near each other, thinking about them in relationship to each other versus as individual pieces. But then more broadly, many of these sites were built to isolate housing residents from the neighborhood and from the city. And how do we think about truly integrating the sites into the neighborhood, thinking about them in context of the neighborhood versus in opposition to the neighborhood? And then lastly, better interaction, both internally and externally. Internally, as Eva mentioned, we want to organize the rest of the authority around this model to meet this model and support it. And every other department that's not in property management have a very clear charge that your job is to support delivering services at the property level. And then externally, we think having this neighborhood approach allows us to work much more closely with our agency partners like sanitation, but also community orgs, and understanding the schools and the churches and the neighborhood groups that are part of our residents' lives. We think having this in place will let us do much more of that and do it more effectively going forward. Let's go to the next slide. So the second half of this model is moving a lot of central office support away from Lower Manhattan, away from 250 Broadway, away from 90 Church, and closer to the developments. So we think having central office support that is directly supporting the neighborhood unlocks a bunch of different things that are very powerful here. So at the moment, the properties, when they have an issue, an HR issue or a procurement issue or a finance issue, we're often going through a liaison, and that person's sort of connecting it through central office. We think having a person or a team of people from those departments who still report up to their functional person, they still report up to the VP of HR or to the head of procurement, but have a dotted line and have some very explicit responsibility to the neighborhood director to say, it is my job to fill vacancies quickly or to help with the budgets or to make sure that the materials are there on time. We think having that hook to the neighborhood is a much more powerful way of structuring those central office departments, making it clear to everyone that all of our jobs are about delivering services to residents. Right? There is no central office department that can exist independent of that delivery. That's the whole point of this agency. And so I think that's the big first benefit. Obviously, we also want every employee of this agency to understand and really live the day-to-day reality of the developments. And that means literally seeing them more often and having people actually go to developments more often to see the sites. We think also putting people at this level will really give them a mindset that they're actually here to deliver customer service and not just work in their silos. Let's go to the next slide. And then just two more things I wanted to mention, and then we can open it up. We've been working with the City Service Design Studio on the annual recertification process. We've heard a lot from residents and from our housing assistants on how burdensome this process is. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of heartbreak in getting the calculations wrong sometimes. We're trying to figure out, how do you streamline this? How do you make this simpler for residents, make it user-friendly, senior-friendly, making the portal much more easy to use, then also reducing the number of transactions, reducing the number of mistakes that are made. Obviously a big benefit to the residents, but also it frees up our housing assistants to do a lot more true customer service work and not purely focusing on throughput of these recertifications. Secondly, we've heard a lot about work orders and the challenges of work orders. Residents say all the time to us, I put in a ticket, no one shows up, you cancel it on me, I gotta wait another 2 months for another ticket. or someone does show up, they do the work, and they tell me it's going to take 6 more people to come finish this job over time. So we've had another firm working with us on how do we think through the sequencing of that work? How do we think through a repair holistically? A resident says, I've got this issue that looks like a paint issue, but in reality, it's a plumbing issue, right? There's a leak in the wall, it's causing a plaster issue and a paint issue. On our end, that may mean 3 different trades have to do that job. How do we think about that on our end to reduce the burden on the resident so they can stay home once or twice instead of 3, 4, 5, 6 times to do that work? So those reforms will also be a big part of this plan that we're trying to work for. I think with that, we'll take questions, comments, reactions from anyone on the board. We're happy to get into anything that is in this presentation or things that were not in this presentation that you think should be in the plan itself.
This is Paul.
I think you're on mute, Mr. Gonzalez. I think you're.
Can I go? This is Paula.
Oh, hey, Paul.
Hey, thank you so much. Remind me the 15 zones that's in my head versus the 30 neighborhoods. Are we going from 15 to 30?
So the zones were specific to REIS, the economic empowerment. And so there is an effort once we go to the neighborhoods to how do you reconfigure everything else that's being done in different configurations, like elevators have sectors, heating has their own thing. Once we have it in place, we're going to try and figure out how do you match everything to that going forward.
Great. So again, REIS is going to be a part of this neighborhood structure. So it will be part of the 30 neighborhoods.
Exactly. And they're already sort of doing it. It's just the numbers are different. So we'll have to figure out how it quite matches.
Right. Got it. And then the second thing is, and it may be premature, you had mentioned on an earlier slide, Eva did, about the board changes. And I wondered if you wanted to comment on that today.
Sure. What we're going to be proposing is a separation of the chair and the CEO. That the chair would be the chair of the board, and we would have a chief executive officer in conjunction with a chief operating officer and a couple other key positions to run the agency. This is a model that's similar to other public housing authorities. It's not, we can debate it. I mean, we will have to debate it because it may require a change in the state law, and we'd have to debate it anyway. But we're going to propose that as a working draft. And then the CEO in this, when we'll bring the org chart back to the board in October so everyone can see what it looks like. But the idea is that the chief operating officer has the properties and the voucher program, resident engagement, and the support teams are out in the sites, plus a lot of the teams that we have now that support the properties. And then we'll have a capital and asset division that combines real estate and capital. Then the CEO, chief fiscal officer, and a chief administrative officer.
Excellent.
So that's the rough outline so far. Again, I emphasize these are proposed. None of these are finished cooking yet, but that's what we're thinking about.
Thanks. The resident focus is great. So thank you so much.
Member Gonzalez, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. All
You
right,
proceed.
so, Mr. Sahoni? Hello? Is he still on?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. So I wanted to just hit on a couple, and then I'll send an email with all the rest of the stuff I have regarding this. As far as the repairs, there was a procedure put in place that would resolve all of these issues. Now, whether it was adopted or not is a different story altogether. But I would say a year ago, there was a procedure adopted where if a resident had many issues in the apartment, right? Instead of addressing the repair work ticket once at a time, what they would do is they would put together the ones that they can work there simultaneously. For example, a window guard in the bedroom, a plastering issue in the bathroom, an electrical issue in the kitchen. Those three can be addressed on the same day because it's being worked in separate rooms and the skilled trades people wouldn't be bumping into each other. So that the resident would then not have to miss even more days of work in order to get that done. The other part of that was the moment that particular repair was done and there needed yet another skilled trade to come in and fix it, the person or the skilled trade person would go in, put in what's called a child ticket, and then that would be follow up immediately instead of treating it like a new ticket and then have to wait forever and ever. And this was implemented, or excuse me, this was suggested and brought to not only the powers that be, but it was also brought to the local developments. Now, whether or not that was implemented, I have no idea. But
Yeah.
it was there and it was effective.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on both, Mr. Gonzalez. I think on the second piece, it's very much part of how we're thinking about this. I think on the first, the authorities tried a couple different versions of that with NYCHA Cares. I think it was called the Work Order Task Force was also doing similar, sort of trying to aggregate tickets together and go do it as a big group. So we're thinking through how do you continue to do that level of service, but also provide each development or neighborhood with what they need skilled trades wise. And so I think you're right. Both those things are a big part of how we're trying to think about that reform.
Yeah, and thinking of that, that's another idea that was brought up before, having the different areas have their own skilled trades so that instead of having to wait for a skilled tradesman from Brooklyn to come to do a repair in the Bronx, they each had their own groups and that would be efficient. Unfortunately, again, I don't know if that was taken into consideration or if it was ever implemented.
Yeah, actually, on that one, Mr. Gonzalez, we're actually on the verge of a new pilot on that exact idea in Western Queens. So Queensbridge, North-South, Astoria, Ravenswood, Woodside, we're actually going to test that specific idea. Can we put the trades at that level, much closer to developments, much more control at that level? And I think the goal is that that goes well to try and roll that out. We can everywhere else afterwards.
Okay, one last thing, and then
Sure.
in the interest of saving time, I'll I'll email the other concerns I have. When you're talking about the annual review, what that also needs is a better, shall we say, supervision of it and less people with their hands involved in approving it, sending it, getting the paperwork. Because what I noticed when we were talking about annual reviews, the moment the documentation was brought in by the resident to the people in the management office, they would in turn ask questions, do whatever they need, supplied whatever documentation was, and then it was supposedly done. But then I find that now once it was in, it had to go to one person to be overlooked. I mean, for someone to look it over, and then from there it had to go to someone else. Then it would go to the manager to approve it, and then it was sent off to God knows where, and it took forever, and there were missing documentations along the way. So I think a shorter amount of people involved and better control of the documentation, and now being that it's in a computer, there can't be any loss of documentation.
Yeah.
So that part I'm kind of happy with. But the other part is you need to have less people involved in that process for it to work correctly.
Got it. It's really helpful. I appreciate that.
Hello,
Yes.
Board Member Adams. Are you finished, Mr. Gonzalez? You finished?
Yes, I finished because I have many, many more, but in the interest of saving time, I'm just going to talk about those.
Okay, I'm just gonna piggyback off a little bit of what he said with the recertification process. He stated that there's too many hands in the pipeline handling it. Initially, the actual process of having the resident come in and sit at that little kiosk needs to be revamped. It's just unthinkable to have people come in sitting in a public space with all their papers, with other people there, and to try to sit there and process it, and just we can't even imagine how it would be for someone elderly or disabled. I mean, it just looks like an abandoned Coke machine sitting there. I got fortunate a couple of times where someone was, after I asked, I got assistance to come back in the back and sit with someone on a computer to go over the documents, to get them downloaded, but to actually sit out in that open space area with all your personal papers, it's just not really a good idea. I'm not sure how that's going to be revamped, but it really should be. There was a part that you came through on about the work schedules that were. I don't know if you can bring that back up. I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about. The staggered work schedule, is that the part now where the caretakers are coming in at 6 a.m.?
Correct. Yeah, alternative work schedule.
Okay, so my conversations with the people that's out there doing it, in particular, I understand that I'm more than likely it probably was, negotiated and approved and whatever the case may be. But a lot of them, especially, like I said, the women feel that, and some of the workers, that it was just poured into their pocket and made their pockets wet without really getting a lot of input on this. But I understand they're more than likely that y'all just enforce it on people. But driving through or walking through when I'm doing my exercise at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and seeing one woman out there trying to do trash by herself because people are on vacation or sick or the COVID or what's going on, it's just a little uncomfortable. And I stopped and spoke to her, and she said, "Yeah, I'm out here. Everybody's on vacation. Some people are not coming back, and just to see them trying to handle piles of garbage by themselves, one woman is just at 6 o'clock in the morning when it's dark now. It's just a little uncomfortable. I'm not sure how that can be, uplifted or whatever to make more comfortable for the people doing the work. Because if they're not comfortable doing the work, then they won't come to work or they don't want to do it. So,
Yes, so we've been taking interviews with caretakers and other employees as well as residents, and we've heard a lot of those concerns. And so we're taking all of that information back now to try to come up with some new recommendations on how the program could work better.
So, Ms. Trimble, would it that some of the partnership we have with the probation department where they send people to work, would that be under consideration to have them come out at that time in the morning to assist? Because people out there by themselves trying to do the work under the schedules that y'all have revamped. And I'm just saying, I don't know if that's a plausible option, but again, if people are not thrilled with doing it and being out there by themselves, I guess.
We can certainly explore that option.
Well, hopefully, okay, I understand, and because it's just not going to be a nice, plausible meal for them to swallow with them trying to do it by themselves when they have to do it. So, and that's basically it for the two areas. And, oh, one more, Chairman Russell, are we going to need money for this stuff? Are we going to need some extra money somewhere to do some of this stuff? And
Yes, we will. And the 2021 budget process is designed to be a transition budget where we begin to put some of the resources in place to anticipating that we're going to have a plan to implement. I would say, and I'm going to be very cautious because we believe that these changes, especially the neighborhood, aligning all the geography of the properties and all the support departments that touch that, is going to require more staff in some key locations. So we have to balance the demands at the properties with the demands for compliance. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes the function's a little different. But I'll be coming to the board, I think, early this year with a budget preview so that you have a sense of what it is that we're going to be talking to you about when we pass the budget in December. But yes, it is going to require more funding, and we're going to have to figure out how to balance that inside the funding we have. Keep in mind, once again, the feds are likely to do a continuing resolution into December, which means we really won't know exactly how much money we're going to have next year, which is a constant problem in terms of trying to estimate what's available. But yes, we're going to have to think about our resources and our costs and think about it pretty hard this year.
Just one last note, the previous conversation we had about that our product is the people in NYCHA and the property. So therefore, if we can show that in a much better light, maybe we can get some more partners to come in. I believe the young lady that you introduced me to for the PACT program, she stated the same thing, is that if we can get, I think she lost one partner, but the thing is we get more people and we can show our people in a better light, that is, with the stigma that we have on it, maybe someone might be kind enough to come in the door, with, something in their pockets for us, or just want to, help out. So that's it.
Well, no, Board Member Adams, I agree. I think Board Member Gavin is helping us sort of reconstitute the Fund for Public Housing in an effort to revitalize that, because we do think those connections are there. I think when Arvin presented on the neighborhoods, the notion that we have a smaller grouping of units and buildings gives a chance perhaps to work with nonprofits and other people doing services in those communities in a stronger way than we've had before. There's a lot of that now. It does exist now. There's quite a bit, actually. Either the resident engagement has fostered that, other groups have approached us, and those connections are there. And we kind of see this change as being a way to, amp that up. And that's possible. With that, we'll have partners and opportunities for funding that we can't quite see yet.
Yeah, when people see us in a different light, like I don't know all the time, but there were some pictures posted on Facebook of the work that's been done under RAD and PACT in some of the apartments. I haven't visited those apartments, but they were just outstanding, gorgeous, and there's a lot of chatter. There was a lot of conversation, and people didn't know that NYCHA was changing like this. And I mean, there was just a lot, just those beautiful pictures. I don't know what development they came from, but I can share them with you because I have them. And I was wondering where this development is that was done. It was just the whole tone was different. With nobody at that time when I was logged on that was saying anything. They said, "Oh wow, this is NYCHA," and and we don't know who might see that and who might want to come in. I'm just saying, but those pictures were gorgeous. If it wasn't NYCHA's name attached to it, I would have thought it was someplace in California or something.
Well, that's our goal, is to be a really good landlord and provide a really good unit, and we're not there yet, but RAD does work. RAD is doing what you described, and we hope between RAD and the blueprint, eventually all the apartments will look that way someday. So.
Okay.
And I also wanted to say to Board Member Adams and all of the board, I had shared with you the new mission and vision and values and goals of the Fund for Public Housing, where I'm volunteering happily. And to your point, Joseph, we added the sentence, uplifting the importance of public housing to our city. And one of our goals is just what you said, to raise the image and the reality of the great people and the opportunities that exist in NYCHA. So thanks for reinforcing that.
And Paula, thank you. And last note is, when people see things like that, what we're doing as far as the apartments, if they see our people in some type of ad or something showing the working people and the people, parents and kids and fathers and stuff, anything that would be a positive light on us, instead of crime scene tape and chaos and sirens, that's going to be key in having anybody that might want to come on along with whatever you're doing. But thank you. That's it.
I want to touch on something that Board Member Adams brought up. And of course, when you answered it, Chair, you mentioned the budget. So I need some verification on something with the staggered work hours. Now, I'm under the assumption that the staggered work hours was also to be able to perform work tickets or work repairs after the normal business hours. But I was made to understand that the people that are staying late are only doing menial tasks in the office and are actually not out there doing repairs. If that is so, then we're paying someone to do overtime that's not doing anything.
Board Member
No,
Gonzalez, I can
go ahead, Eva.
I just want to clarify, right now, we implemented AWS for caretakers about a year ago.
Right.
AWS for maintenance workers was also negotiated and approved. However, we're still working on implementing that. It got delayed due to COVID. So right now, while we have the authorization to do alternative work schedules for maintenance workers, which would be the actual repair work that you're referring to, we don't
Right.
plan to implement that right now until January. We're working on that scheduling right now. So yes, it's
Okay.
only for caretakers as we've implemented it so far.
Then I stand corrected because I thought all of that was already done. So I stand corrected.
Okay. Thank you, Eva and Arvind, and thank you, board members, for your questions and comments. There's one additional presentation on capital projects spend update and on capital projects temporary suspension, board approved temporary suspensions for its weatherization assistance program. These reports also have been provided to the board members in advance. There will be a short summary presentation by Steve Lovesey. Steve? Steve Lovesey? Steve, can you unmute, please? Thank you. Okay, we're unable to hear Steve. So we'll get back to this report. In the reports were already provided to the board members. Board members, if you have any questions, when Steve gets back online and we can hear him. Steve? Can't hear him. Can someone please assist him? In the meantime, we will proceed with the calendared items. Item number 1, Patty?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Patty Bayros, and I'm the CIO at the New York City Housing Authority. Thanks very much for your time today, and I'll be presenting item number 1 for your consideration. This request is for authorization to ratify an agreement with Selco Partnership DBA, HAA for approval to enter into the contract was given by the general manager to prevent a lapse in service, and the contract has a dollar value not to exceed $16 million. As you know, many of NYCHA's staff members rely on mobile devices, including phones, tablets, MiFis, and others, to conduct their daily activities to support our residents. The use of wireless and cellular devices has increased dramatically over the past several years, especially considering the implementation of the work order mobile software solution, and more recently due to the large number of remote workers for COVID. While the number of devices was based on a snapshot of NYCHA devices and costs at a point in time in April 2020, we're continuing to look to optimize our usage of devices, reducing our footprint and associated costs wherever possible. Additionally, given that this contract is constrained only by a not to exceed value, we're continuing to explore competition with alternative providers to reduce costs, diversify our footprint, and improve coverage wherever possible. Thanks. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hi, Patty. I got your responses, so thank you. I just and with a little help from Vilma Wheat, she helped me, and just to condense it and understand it, that if the service that's provided on the devices and the hardware, software is any issue, that there will be some sort of restitution if the services and stuff fail out, or whatever happens with our service and what we use. That's just to summarize it. That's what I understand, what I'm reading, right? That's all.
That is absolutely correct. We have a call with Verizon next week to confirm the actual process, but we also are mapping all of our tickets. So when we do get any issue around service coverage related to wireless devices, we will be ensuring that Verizon complies with the contract and gives service credits in terms of dollars for the degraded services.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay. If no further questions, thank you, Patty. We'll move on to items 2 and 3. Cal?
Yes, good morning. My name is Cal Bruno. I'm the Vice President for Operational Analysis and Contract Management. I apologize for having to call in. I'm having some IT challenges with remote login this morning. I'll be presenting items 2 and 3 for your consideration. Item number 2, we are requesting authorization to approve a funding increase for $8 million to the Memorandum of Understanding with the New York City Department of Probation. This memorandum provides various maintenance and janitorial tasks at development citywide. Work crews are used to supplement existing authority staff to do basic janitorial and grounds type of work. This increase is required to fund continued provision of services during the remainder of the 2 one-year renewal options terms. The projected Section 3 hires is 45. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we can just proceed with the presentations. Any questions, the board member will interrupt and ask. So please proceed.
Thank you. Item 3, I am requesting authorization to enter into an agreement with Vanguard Direct for annual notice to residents commencing October 1st and continuing through September 30th, 2025. This agreement includes an initial 3-year term and 2 one-year renewal options. The agreement is at 109% of our cost estimate and has 0 projected Section 3 hires. The agreement provides for the creation, printing, mailing, and tracking of various annual notices and survey responses, such as the stove knob cover survey, lead-based paint and window guard notices, and fire and emergency preparedness service bulletin.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Cal. We'll proceed to items 4 and 5. Razul?
Good morning. My name is Rasul Azanjad. I'm the Vice President for Healthy Home. Requesting authorization to award 2 IDIQ contract job order contracting for general construction to AWL Industry Incorporated. And this work, scope of work is included, but not limited to general construction work, demolition, electrical, plumbing, roofing, scaffolding, mold remediation, ventilation, and air conditioning. These are all related to facilitate repair of walls and ceiling and floors when we do mold remediation. The minimum amount of guaranteed minimum amount of work is $50,000, and the maximum not to exceed is $10 million. The term of this contract is 2 years, with 2 additional 1-year renewal at authority sole discretion. The VNC for this vendor was requested, and we will not award until the VNC is clear. The AWL is not is a non-minority-owned business enterprise. Funding for this is operating fund, and its source is federal. The Section 3, the vendor has mentioned that he's going to hire 4 people under Section 3. Any question?
Mr. Rosen, yeah, you said the minimum amount was 50,000, and I didn't hear the maximum amount on it. What you were saying?
The maximum amount is $10 million.
That's a big jump. Okay.
This is a job order contract, so we want to have a limitation on how far we can go.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Razul.
Thank you.
Vanessa Jones, item 6.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Vanessa Jones, and I'm a senior project manager in NYCHA's Real Estate Development Department. The board resolution before you is a request to amend Board Resolution 19-7-3176, which concerns the atrium at Sumner, a new construction senior housing project at the Summer Houses development in the Bedford-Stuyvesant neighborhood of Brooklyn. The original board resolution granted the authority permission to submit a Section 18 application for this project to HUD for approval to enter into a 99-year ground lease with members of Sumner Senior Partners, LLC, a joint venture between Urban Builders Collaborative, LLC, and 2 nonprofit organizations, Self-Help Community Services and Riseboro Community Partnership. The amendment I am presenting today requests one change to the original board resolution: to increase the zoning floor area from 70,000 square feet to 138,935 square feet. This change is being made since the original board resolution incorrectly stated that the approximate square feet was 70,000 instead of 138,935. As background, the atrium at Sumner is a senior housing project with 189 residential units and 1 superintendent's unit. It includes a ground floor community facility and on-site supportive services for special needs residents. The total development cost for this project is $116 million. The project's 189 units consists of 130 studios and 59 one-bedroom apartments. The 132 units will be permanently affordable for seniors and with incomes up to 50% of area median income. The remaining units represent the 30% homes set aside, which will be permanently affordable for seniors with incomes up to 30% AMI. The selected development team plans to hire 22 Section 3 employees as porters, electricians, carpenters, and general laborers. This project is scheduled to close in the summer of 2021. Thank you for considering this request.
Thank you, Vanessa. We'll proceed to item number 7. If there are no questions. Marissa?
Hi, good morning. I'm Marissa Schaefer, the VP of Transactions in the Real Estate Development Department at NYCHA, and today I will be presenting Board Resolution number 7 for your consideration. Today we are requesting authorization relating to PACT, Permanent Affordability Commitment Together, conversion of 16 developments known as the PACT Manhattan Bundle. These developments in total consist of 1,718 units in Manhattan. The location of the developments is shown on the map, which you should have on your screen if you're joining through a computer or other device. It's also attached as the final page of the board resolution. Specifically, we are requesting authorization to submit documents to HUD for conversion approvals, form NYCHA affiliate entities to be part of the transaction, enter into a 99-year ground lease and other related documents with NYCHA's PACT partner, a team led by Monadnock Development, which I'll describe in greater detail, and enter into a payment in lieu of taxes, a pilot agreement with the City of New York, and otherwise provide financing to the transaction. The PACT conversion entails conversion of these units from the Section 9 program to Section 8 through 3 methods: RAD, Section 18, and the conversion method for NYCHA's unfunded developments, known as Part 200. More detail on each of these 3 conversion methods can be found in the briefing memo. The authority's primary goal for the transaction is to complete necessary capital preservation of the project site and stabilize existing and future future federal subsidy for the project. The structure proposed for this transaction will accomplish this goal and will ensure that the authority maintains an interest in and control over the project sites in perpetuity. Upon PACT conversion, the 16 NYCHA developments in this transaction will undergo a comprehensive renovation and rehabilitation. To back up, regarding the PACT program more generally, to date, NYCHA has converted almost 8,000 apartments to the Section 8 program and raised over $1.1 billion for repairs. Next year, NYCHA is aiming to convert an additional 8,000 units with similarly sized investment of over $1 billion. The RFP, the request for proposal for the PACT Manhattan bundle, was released on February 1st, 2019, and it solicited proposals for the financing, tenant-in-place rehabilitation, property management, and social services delivery to facilitate the conversion of these 16 public housing developments in Manhattan. NYCHA selected a team led by Monadnock Development, partnering with other members that are outlined in the briefing materials, which include a nonprofit and a minority-owned co-developer, after a competitive evaluation of the 11 proposals received in response to the RFP. HUD issued its initial approval for the transaction through its commitment to enter into a Housing Assistance Payment Contract, the CHAP, on April 5th, 2019. HUD requires the authority to submit applications for each of the RAD, Section 18, and Part 200 conversions. These applications were authorized by 3 previous board resolutions that are further described in the briefing materials. Approval for the Part 200 application was received from HUD on June 12, 2020. The RAD application and the Section 18 application are currently under HUD review and are expected in October 2020. The New York City Housing Development Corporation, HDC, will act as the primary underwriter and lender for this transaction, which remains subject to HDC's board approval, also expected in October 2020. The anticipated total cost to recapitalize and rehab the project sites is approximately $458 million. The rehab scope includes substantial physical repair of the units, common areas, building envelopes and systems, and grounds, which will all be completed with residents remaining in place. This rehab scope includes, but is not limited to, installation of new kitchens, bathrooms, flooring, high-efficiency boilers, hot water heaters, windows, and the modernization of elevators and fire alarms. The transaction budget includes a total acquisition value to NYCHA of approximately $82 million. This is broken down as follows, and all figures are approximate. Approximately $50 million will be paid to NYCHA as a cash acquisition payment at closing. Approximately $11 million represents existing debt that will be repaid at closing. The balance of $20 million will be held by the authority as one or more seller notes to be repaid from cash flow over time. In terms of cash that will go to the authority in connection with the transaction, in addition to the $50 million upfront acquisition payment I just mentioned, it is also anticipated that the authority will receive an estimated almost $60 million from cash flow over 30 years. The transaction will be financed by a number of sources, which are described in more detail in the briefing memo, and which include a $70 million loan from HDC, with NYCHA participating in that loan in the amount of $30 million. This $30 million participation is sourced from proceeds from the prior PACT transaction that closed in February, the PACT Brooklyn bundle. Use of these proceeds is subject to HUD approval, and that approval was just received. Residents must be in good standing and sign a Section 8 lease in order to benefit from HUD's RAD resident protections upon the conversion, which are mandatory on the developments pursuant to the terms of the HAP contract. NYCHA and the PACT developer have been in contact with residents concerning the actions residents must take as NYCHA public housing residents in order to successfully convert to project-based Section 8. Specifically, information regarding the obligations and responsibilities of residents in order to successfully convert to Section 8 has been provided in writing to each resident through the mail and will be further reviewed in virtual meetings, the first of which was held yesterday, another will be held today and tomorrow, with the opportunity for residents to ask questions of NYCHA's, among others, NYCHA's leased housing department, which administers the Section 8 program, and the PACT developer. Further, a legal services hotline has been established by Legal Aid to be available for residents to answer any questions about the Section 8 lease or any other questions relating to the residents' obligations and responsibilities in connection with the conversion. That hotline has been live for a few weeks, and we understand has been very well utilized to date. As I mentioned, NYCHA, the PACT partner, and Legal Aid collectively are holding a series of virtual teletown halls with residents to explain the leasing process and answer questions regarding residents' responsibilities in connection with the conversion, and otherwise direct residents to use the Legal Aid hotline. Under PACT, residents will receive the following benefits. All residents will continue to pay no more than 30% of their adjusted gross income towards rent. If a family is not currently paying rent at this level, they will be phased into paying the appropriate rent amount for their household size and income. They'll benefit from substantial physical preservation and rehabilitation of their units, the common areas, building envelope systems and grounds, dedicated property management staff assigned to the development, increased delivery of needs-based social services, which will be informed by resident surveys performed on a development by development basis. There will be no displacement during construction, as preservation work will be done with residents in place with proper COVID safety procedures. And residents will continue to have the rights and protections consistent with what is provided under the public housing program. The operation and leasing of the project sites will be subject to ongoing affordability restrictions, which is set forth in many of the transaction documents, including the ground lease, the HUD-RAD use agreements, and regulatory agreements reported on the public record against the project sites. The authority and the PACT partner have met with residents and will continue to engage with residents throughout the process via meetings now held remotely and other written notices. NYCHA and the PACT partner have held over 70 meetings with residents since July 2018, with a pause on in-person resident engagement during the height of COVID in New York City. Resident engagement resumed in July 2020 through resident teletown halls, the Legal Aid hotline, NYCHA hotline, and the developers hotline, mailings, meetings with resident leadership, and other safe, socially distanced or remote methods of community communication and engagement. The PACT partner has provided a hiring plan that will provide Section 3 hiring and training opportunities and other economic opportunities. These are further described in the briefing materials, but in total accommodates 624 economic opportunities and 170 Section 3 hires. As I mentioned earlier, it is anticipated there will be a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with the city, a pilot agreement, through which taxes will be abated so long as affordability requirements established in the ground lease are maintained. The other legal documents, agreements, and other corporate action that will be entered into at closing are described in greater detail in the briefing memo. Lastly, the transaction is anticipated to close on or about December 31st, 2020. Thank you all for your time.
Ms. Schaefer, good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Board Member Adams. First of all, thank you for sending that little addendum part in page 6 going in page 7, which initially just stated what you had just previously just said. The tenant's responsibility is what they're supposed to do. And that was, for me, that was very, very satisfactory. So now, since we've told them and they understand, then it's upon them to reach out for help or whatever they need to transition along with what we're trying to do. So thank you for that. And also, I'm aware of the mailings. I haven't got a copy yet, but it's my understanding that that is even more stronger, reinforced language pertaining to what the residents' responsibility and what they must do and adhere to move forward, keep the apartments, and if they need help, what also to do. So that sounds outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Adams, both for your feedback and for your comment. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hello.
Chris. Oh.
Hello, I have a question. This is Board Member Young. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good afternoon. I'd like you to, can you give more information about the phase-in for rent for those individuals that are paying the flat rent at this point, is it going to be phased in by a certain percentage of their rent? How is that going to work?
It's phased in over a 5-year period, so even increases over 5 years, and that pertains to the currently on the Wise Towers and 344 East 28th Street, the two Part 200 developments, unfunded developments.
So it would be phased in based on a certain amount each year?
Yes,
Like
the
maybe
same amount each year over a 5-year period. And for any questions that residents have, they have the legal aid hotline who can help assist them and answer those specific questions about how it will be phased in.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Marissa. If no further questions, before we begin our presentation of 8 to 9 with Anika, I just want to state for the record that Board Member Young had been logged in from the beginning of the meeting, although she could not be heard initially, and now she can be heard, so she can participate as you saw a few minutes ago. Thank you. Anika, items 8 and 9, please.
I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the New York City Housing Authority. I'll be presenting items 8 for your consideration. Item 8 requests authorization to award the authority's property and terrorism insurance policies to provide $300 million of property insurance subject to a $5 million per occurrence deductible for flood and named storm coverage and a $1 million deductible for all other perils. Through a separate placement, we are also providing $150 million of terrorism insurance subject to a $100,000 deductible. The total annual property and insurance terrorism program premium is $14,716,471, and the program is effective on October 30th, 2020, continuing through October 30th, 2021. The premium consists of property premiums of $14.4 million and terrorism premiums of $286,000. With that, I request your approval to award the renewal property and terrorism insurance program as described.
Terrific. Thank you, Anika. If no questions, we will move on to item number 9.
And I'd like to turn it to our controller, Jeffrey Lesnoy, who will be presenting item 9 for your consideration. Jeffrey?
Good morning, board members. Good morning, board members. My name is Jeffrey Lesnoy. I am the controller of New York City Housing Authority, and I'm pleased to present Resolution 9 to the board today. Authorization is requested to approve the issuance of the authority's 2019 audited financial statements presented in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the U.S. as recommended by the authority's audit committee and in compliance with the audit committee charter.
Computer, I'll call you back.
The authority's loss before capital contributions for 2019 was $3.2 billion, compared to a loss of $268 million in 2018. This $2.9 billion increase in loss is due primarily to current year costs of $2.7 billion for lead-based paint remediation and abatement, which has been reflected as a special item on the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net possession. Such costs have been recorded in accordance with GASB 49, which require that a pollution remediation obligation be recognized when a government is compelled to take action because of imminent danger to public health, or when a government is named by a regulator as a potentially responsible party. In addition to New York City Local Law 1, which requires landlords to take certain action to prevent lead poisoning in children under 6, the authority has entered into an agreement with HUD, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, and the City of New York, which among many requirements obligates NYCHA to perform interim controls and permanent abatement of lead-based paint in its properties over the 20-year term of the agreement. Despite the gradual timing of work streams and cash outlays over the 20-year period, GASB 49 requires that the lifetime estimate of such costs be recorded immediately upon triggering of the obligation. Costs recorded include apartment units, internal common areas, and playgrounds, and such costs are subject to variation in testing results, timing of remediation and abatement, variation in contractor costs, and timing of PACT transactions. At this time, the authority is unable to reasonably estimate the cost for exterior buildings, fencing, and soil. And as a result, these costs have not been included within the $2.84 billion of cumulative costs. This is consistent with the underlying accounting standards, GASB 49, which indicates that only components that are reasonably estimable should be recorded. I have provided you with a full set of financial statements within the briefing memo, and please let me know if I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeffrey. We'll now proceed to item 10. Megan? Item 10.
Hi, my name is Megan Patrick, and I'm a program manager in the Strategic Planning Department. I work in the Office of Strategy and Innovation, led by Executive Vice President Eva Trimble. Today, we are seeking authorization to approve a change order to the agreement with Carpedia Hospitality Corp., also known as Carpedia, to redesign the work order system. This agreement commenced on November 22nd, 2019 for a one-year term and a one-year renewal option. It did not require prior board authorization. We request the change in order to fund the additional scope items not to exceed $1.74 million and to extend the one-year renewal option term for an additional 2 months. As was mentioned earlier, during the engagement process in the transformation plan, NYCHA heard from residents that moving skilled trades workers closer to the development level would be a material improvement. This echoed feedback from residents, employees, and recommendations from plaintiffs in the Baez versus New York City Housing Authority case. This also matched the recommendations by Carpedia. Since January of 2019, Carpedia has worked closely with our field staff, interviewing dozens of employees and meeting weekly with dozens of others, developing the necessary relationships to understand the most impactful changes to our work order system. In order to proceed with the contemplated work order pilot and expansion across the portfolio, as according to directives in the transformation plan, additional funding would be needed beginning October 1st. This change order would enable the funding supporting the following scope items. Number 1, skilled trades decentralization pilot at Queensbridge North, Queensbridge South, Astoria and Woodside, which executes on the design solutions to, number 1, optimize resource distribution, to revise the organizational structure, to create formal staffing contingency plans, to establish productivity hours by integrating Kronos and Maximo, among other improvements. It will also fund a period to codify learnings from the pilot program to plan, design, and execute NYCHA-wide implementation of skilled trades decentralization. Finally, it will fund implementation of identified long-term improvement plans, which include job-based scoping and reporting and assignment capability to manage performance based on the whole work request, not just the work order or task, all of the work orders that have been assigned within that unit, and simplification of failure class problem codes. So with that, we'll open to any questions. The Office of Strategy and Innovation hereby requests that the board authorize the change order to the agreement with Carpedia. Thank you so much for your time.
So, Board Member Gonzalez, Ms. Patrick, when you're redesigning this maintenance work order system, one of the biggest problems that it had was communications between the development, the resident, and the planning unit and skilled trades. I heard you mention 3 of the 4. So my concern is how deep and how direct will the communications be with the planning unit that is the unit that disperses the skilled tradespeople to the development where the repair is needed?
So that's a great question. I think that one of the best things about having a single team on site, so having the decentralized skilled trades, is that you know who your plumber is, you know who your painter is, you know who your plasterer is. And so there's a relationship that's formed both with the development and the resident. In terms of the connection with the planning unit, what we want to do is pretty much what you had discussed earlier. When you have a problem, we want to walk through with the resident exactly what needs to be done. What are all the steps? And not just the first step and then the second step and then the third step. Additionally, the planning unit will no longer be responsible for the entire borough. They will only be responsible for that smaller RAM level or neighborhood level unit. So that planner is only responsible for Queensbridge North, Queensbridge South, Astoria and Woodside. And this allows for them to become more familiar with the buildings. It allows for them to become more familiar with the employees, and allows for them to become more familiar with the residents.
Thank you very much. Sounds very good.
Terrific. Thank you, Megan. Before we proceed with items 11 through 18, Steve, can you hear me and can I hear you?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much, Steve. Before you begin your presentation of 11 through 18, kindly give a short summary report on the capital project spend update and the approved temporary suspension for CPD's weatherization assistance program. The board has already been provided with these reports.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Good morning. My name is Stephen Lovesey. I'm the Executive Vice President for Capital Projects Division. Of course, my apologies for the earlier technical issue. As Jacqueline indicated, I'll provide you with the weatherization report, the capital spend rate report, and the board items 11 through 18 for your consideration. The weatherization program in 2019 Board Resolution number 19-9/25-16 authorized for temporary suspension of prerequisite authority approval and providing a report to the board. As you will see, there are no changes to the projects and awards for this month. There are no change orders, and we are on schedule, and there is no change to the schedule. The second item would be the Capital Projects Division August 2020 spend. This is a kind of a fascinating document you are seeing for the first, this is the first report that we're seeing the impacts of COVID-19 and the city funded moratorium. You will see that the city spend has dropped significantly. We hover around 10 to 12 million per spend each month. We are now hovering around 3 million. That is a direct correlation to the funding hold from the city of New York. The EPC number also went down. We were hovering around 10 million on that, but we, during COVID, stopped all in-unit work, and the EPC number's about 4 million. The state stayed the same. Disaster recovery, in essence, stayed the same. What you'll find interesting, though, is the overall spend is on par with the previous months, actually a little above at 83 million versus the hovering of around the 70s and 80s. Last month, I think it was 70 something. What is that? Well, it's the federal increase. And this is really because NYCHA moved about 72 million of the city-funded projects over to the federal funding line, for some of them permanently, some of them for short term, and as well, in order for us to make sure that we had site safety and security at the construction sites that were temporarily closed, around 67 of them, we fronted about $14 million. And so you're seeing those increases in the federal dollars. But it still illustrates that Capital Projects Division is continuing to do the work that we have funding for, and to make sure that we are on schedule. We are identified as an essential piece as part of the COVID pandemic. If there are no questions on either of those reports, I will move on to board items 11 through 18 for your consideration.
Terrific. Please proceed.
Board items 11 through 13 are Capital Projects Division is seeking authorization for the award of 3 indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity job order contracts. This is for general construction work at various developments citywide. This would be for general construction work, hazmat, electrical, HVAC, brickwork, roofing, and plumbing as part of our JOC contract program. And I will also speak about the same bid through the board items 15 through 18. There were 17 IDIQ JOC contracts, job order contracts to address work across the CPD portfolio. As I mentioned, the different items. Contractors competitively bid with an adjusted bid factor based on a pre-established prices in our construction task catalog. CPD's estimates for a bid factor on these was around 1.21, which is acceptable threshold based on the current market and bid factors of JOC contract work recently at the authority and other agencies. For these three contracts, this would be item number 11, GR1925097. We identified a bidder, WDF Inc., as the second lowest responsive and responsible bidder with a bid factor of 1.2425 for the contract. We recommend awarding the contract number GR1925097 to WDF. WDF's proposed Section 3 hires for this award would be around 10, and their bid factor was around, as I mentioned, 1.24, which is about 2.69% variance. The other two contracts associated to this, we proposed Gemco Electrical Contractors, Inc. They were the lowest responsive and responsible bidder with a bid factor of 1.1298, and we recommend awards for both contract 1925098 and 1925099, again for general construction. Their variance was a negative 6.63, and they are recommending 11 Section 3 hires for each of the contracts. There are no further questions. I will move on to, oh, yep.
Board Member Adams, Steve, good morning.
Hi, Board Member Adams.
See the inspection reports, thank you.
Great.
The lovely pictures and everything, which made it easy for me. And I read over them, and I got everything that that I requested from you. Hopefully, at some point in time, that because of the COVID, we did have a meeting or something scheduled with procurement to explain how you'll come to decisions and the rating systems to award contracts. I really hope that it's scheduled at some point in time, because I really have a lot of questions about how some, things make it to the finish line. And I understand that NYCHA evaluates what's going to be done for them, and that's the guidelines. But I really would like to sit in on that meeting that was never rescheduled, because it would probably give me a lot of clarity, and I have a lot of questions of how some things get vetted, the rating system you use, things of that nature. But other than that, you sent me, you sent me what was requested, and thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, Board Member Adams. I will follow up with procurement, and we'll set up a meeting. We'll just do a web hosting meeting, and we can go over each of the process by which a contractor is selected for our proposals.
Your contract, selected and approved. That would be very helpful, at least for me, for sure. Thank you.
Yep. Let's do that soon. So we'll set that up.
But tomorrow? No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Okay. We'll soon. Well, like maybe this month or first part of next month. Actually, we're almost at the end of the month.
Wrote that down, Steve.
Board item number 14. Capital Projects Division seeks authorization to ratify a funding increase to an agreement with D&B Engineers and Architects, PC, for construction management as agent services This is for the Recovery and Resiliency Program, and it is specifically for Carlton Manor. The increase is $100,000. This is pursuant to Board Resolution 15-3/25-6, where the authority entered a 5-year agreement with DNB for CM services. This is for 3 developments associated to the Recovery and Resiliency Program: Carlton Manor, Hamilton Houses, and Redfern. Their not to exceed amount was $13,350,444.02. There have been 4 increases to their contract to date, and this is a variety associated to all of the 3 projects that they are managing. This increase is specific to Carlton Manor. Since the award of the agreement, the scope of work and construction durations of the projects being managed by DNB have increased, and it is important. It's necessary for us to increase the staff fees and associated allowances to provide adequate management of these construction projects. CPD is authorizing to ratify the funding increase to DB's agreement, as I mentioned, in the amount of $100,000, and this will cover the cost of additional inspections, which commenced on August 1st, 2020, and is continuing through February 1st, 2021. This funding increase will bring the total value of the agreement to $21,143,736.61. It will be funded through FEMA dollars. If there are no further questions on board item number 14, I will move on to board items number 11 through 13.
15 through 18?
I'm sorry, 15 through 18, excuse me.
Let's not go backwards, Steve.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And this is related to 11 through 13. This was the same bid program for the indefinite delivery, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. But in these scenarios, we're seeking authorization to reject 4 of those bids. 2 of them were for brick, 2 of them were for roofing. As it's indicated in the board briefing, there was some nomenclature that was confusing language in the bid scope to the bidders, and that caused those bidders to not fulfill identifying the experience of projects to satisfy the 40% of the not to exceed amount. And so we will be editing that and putting this back out to bid. Those 4 rejections would be for BW 1927425, BW 1927427, RF 1927421, and RF 1927423. If there are no further questions, that concludes.
Hey, Steve, I'm sorry, Steve, it's Craig.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand, we used a term, and so I'm trying to figure out exactly what was wrong. The bid document said that they have to have what, experience or jobs that are 40% of what?
Not less than 40% of the contractor's total bid base.
They have to have those jobs in hand now or have done them?
Have done them, yeah.
Okay. So that's what it said. And it said, but then it says, because this was, the language should have stated not to exceed amount as opposed to total base bid. So it's 40% of the not to exceed amount of the contract. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So that 40%, because of the dollar number, was different. Contract law, we couldn't move forward with those, and unfortunately, there wasn't an RFI that came in to add clarification to that. And so we
could not issue an addendum or anything.
I don't think we didn't catch it, and the contractors didn't catch it until the bid opening.
To the bid opening.
Yep. And I mean, this is a JOC contract, so there is actually a catalog already. These are fairly fast to procure. We also manage our contracts to make sure that we're not running out of capacity ahead of time. So we do have capacity on our existing contracts. It's a time issue as well as an annoyance that we have reached out to those contractors. I like to say that engineers and architects love math, and if the lines of math are mistakes, allow thinking to happen. And so we're going to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. But it's these small nomenclature pieces in a fairly thick contract that we have to just double check before we put them out to bid.
Okay, thanks.
Steve Adams,
yes.
When just elaborate a little bit more. When you say 40% of the work had not been done, can you elaborate? Since these were turned down, just need a little clarification what that means exactly. You mean not done with NYCHA or in the scope of other work they've done? I'm a little confused. I'm just
right. So I mean, in the contract language, that way we make sure that they have significant experience in the job order that we're requesting. Meaning, if we're going to go for brickwork, you have to show a certain amount of experience so that we make sure that that contractor knows how to do that work type and that they're not just bidding. Is where we request that, in essence, that they've done a certain percentage of work that represents what the work that they are going to be doing. It's a quality assurance, so people are not learning on the job on NYCHA projects. And so, again, it was basically 40% of the work that's associated that they could illustrate that they have done brickwork, or 40% of the total amount, meaning that dollar amount of work that they could show that they've done roofing.
okay. I understand it. I'm just going to save my next question for this meeting we're going to have. I'm it's sitting right in my throat, but I'm not going to ask it. You can move along.
Okay. And we will set up the meeting to go through the procurement process and how NYCHA selects its contractors based on the city and state rules.
I will be there with my hearing.
Okay.
What?
Go ahead, Member Gonzalez.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Lovesey or Jay Stephen, whichever way you want to be referred to. Quick question. Has there been any thought into making the bids more attractive in order to maybe get more or new, young, and upcoming contractors to start bidding on NYCHA projects?
Thank you very much. That's a great question, because we are doing that. We're doing a couple of different things. Number one, what we've started to do is, in the past, because of the size of the contracts, it requires a set of bonding. Bonding is an insurance to us to make sure that the project moves forward. And if we start to look at some of these projects, we've got a roofing project. Well, it's for an entire development. That's 18 buildings. That's a lot of roofing material. That's a lot of dollars. And so the bonding capacity has to be large for those contractors. What we've been doing is changing up our contracts to not split up, but to make a varied size of projects in terms of cost. So that way we could get companies that are new or smaller that have that don't have the bonding capacities to do these large projects. And so we've actually been kind of looking at our contracts and making a mix of sizes in order to draw out new, smaller startup firms that may have done, they've done work, but they aren't large enough to do, to get the bonding capacities. And that's one. Two, we've also done that in our professional services. So the previous CM contract that we went out, construction managers as agents, we actually divided the program up into two pieces, one for larger projects and one for smaller projects. This allowed for smaller professional firms that may or may not have done work for NYCHA in the past to join and do work for the capital projects division. Obviously, the idea is the more and more projects one does, the larger the firm gets, and then they have an opportunity to bid on everything. And then the last item is that we've been doing a considerable amount of outreach. I'll use the elevators as an example, but elevators have not. We've not been able to procure elevators in quite some time. I think the year was 2014, and so we've been working with the locals and having numerous webinars and meeting with contractors as well as Local 3 in order to better define our contracts and our terms to make sure that we're writing our contracts to be industry standard, to bring in individuals into the fold. I think the best example of that is the roofing program. So when we designed out the roofing program, this is the $1 billion that this administration provided to the Housing Authority, $100 million each year for 10 years. That has been so successful that the city has allowed NYCHA to increase the number of roofing that we're doing per year with funding, and we're going to decrease that 10 years down to, I think, about half of the time. And so that program, we sat down with all of the roofing manufacturers. We allowed them to work with us through our specifications early on in the pre-construction to make sure that our specs allowed for the largest variety of roofing types within the liquid applied concept. And what that's done is it's allowed for a large amount of competition. I was speaking with another agency recently, and teasingly, but I will hold this as a badge of honor. They said, well, NYCHA has taken the complete market on roofing right now. One is that we're paying on an average of 29 days, which is industry standard. So we're processing requisitions if they are accurate in 29 days to make sure that companies are not holding a whole bunch of capital, a whole bunch of materials and staff over a period of time. That's better than, that's about industry standard and probably better than most agencies, as well as we've simplified our specifications and we've simplified our contracts to make them more industry standard as much as we could to make sure that we're obviously meeting the federal, state, and city mandates. But by doing so, we've attracted a lot of roofing manufacturers and we've attracted a lot of roofing companies. And we're going to continue that pattern as we go into boilers, as we go into elevators, as we go into just interior work.
Okay, well that sounds very good. And just in doing this initiative, that would not affect in any way the scope of work that has to be done, correct?
No, it would not affect the scope of work.
Okay.
What it does is it creates a little bit more coordination on the capital project side, because we would have, for example, a couple of different contractors at a development. I'll give the example of Queensbridge, where we were doing the roofs and the brickwork with one contractor, the mayor's action plan, the lighting and the security with another contractor, and a community center and also a job placement center with another contractor. I think it was job placement, but it was an office area. And by doing so, we had a mix of, as you can imagine, a really large contract, brick and roofs, a medium-sized contract with mayor's action plan, lighting, and then smaller projects for the community center and the offices. And so it required, though, obviously more coordination on the capital side to make sure that we were doing the resident engagement and having that dialogue. But for, as you've asked, and I think this is the most important for us, is it started to bring in contractors and construction managers that may have not done work for us because we were providing a wide variety of bonding, contract sizes and bonding capacities.
Thank you very much. Sounds good.
Steve, this is
You-
Paula Gavin. I want to add the thanks to that, but I also want to make sure that it has an MBWE lens when you were talking about the outreach.
So it completely does, because as we move to smaller contracts, that would be the SB of the MWSBE. And so that is our goal, in essence, to pull that. In addition to that, what we've done on some of our really large contracts is that we have asked those firms if they were going to subcontract. They could potentially do some of that work in-house, but if they could then subcontractor to smaller firms, then we're really building up the market associated to that, where small firms are able to work on large large projects because they're consultants, and then they get that into their portfolio. Really, I think a large number of those tend to be MWSBs.
Thank you so much.
Steve.
Yes.
Adam, can you just elaborate in very simple terms that you use sometimes? Local 3, the electrician union, what is their input regarding elevators? Or what are you looking to get from them?
That's a very good question. Local 3 bids on most of the NYCHA elevator work because their elevator unit deals with elevators already in place. Local 1, who handles elevators as well and who's a part of the PLA, they, for the most part, do only new elevators. So ground up, new buildings, new elevators, and they were not interested in bidding on NYCHA work. And so the elevators are actually through negotiations was moved out of the PLA, and Local 3, for the most part, bids on those elevators for us.
So they're a cleanup. Okay. All right, I got you.
Existing condition elevators.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for that question.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Steve. We will move on to items 19 through 41. Before we begin, I just want to again request that if you're not speaking, everyone's mic should be on silent. So I should see a red mark through the microphone on everyone's microphone, unless the person who's presenting, other than the person who's presenting, please, because the next 20-something items are going to be presented and hopefully efficiently and effectively without any background noise or interference. So, Joe, are you on?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So, Joe, good morning. Joe, good afternoon. Joe will present items 19 through 41. However, he will first present items 19 through 22, which will be immediately followed by a concise presentation by Cal Bruno on the status update of NYCHA's air conditioner initiative. And thereafter, Joe will continue presenting items 23 through 41. Joe, you will continuously present. If a board member has a question, that board member will interrupt. You may proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. This is Joe Cortine, VP of Operations, presenting items 19 through 41. These first two, 19 and 20, we're seeking to authorization to award contracts. 19 is an IDIQ contract for the purchase and delivery of plastic laminated wood doors with Cuisine Cretonne Incorporated in the amount of $2,275,700. For asbestos abatement and replacement of floor tiles in move-out apartments. This is a 2-year requirement contract with a 1-year renewal option. The amount of $6,047,871.40, encompassing various Manhattan developments. Okay. Items 21 and 22 are contracts regarding the seeking ratification of contracts agreements with vendors related to the window air conditioning. The first one is item 21 is with Clearview Appliance Corporation. Commenced on June 2nd of 2020 and continued on through December 1st of 2021. At various developments citywide in the amount of $1,200,000. Item 22 is a contract with Alliance Maintenance First Quality for the installation of those window air conditioning units, commencing on June 23rd of 2020 and on through December 22nd of 2021. Various developments citywide in the amount of $4,500,000. So Cal?
Yes.
You know,
yes. Good afternoon. This is Cal
Thank you
Bruno
very
again.
much.
I'll provide a brief update on our AC installation. Through Sunday, September 27th, we have installed 15,900 air conditioners. First Quality Maintenance, one of the vendors that Joe just spoke about, installed 4,192. The other vendor, Clearview Appliance Corporation, installed 1,600. We have approximately 150 installs scheduled for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, which we are working on through today. We anticipate being able to install between 16,300 and 16,500 by the program's end, which is today, September 30th. Our goal was 17,000, and providing we get up to 16,500, that'll be 97% of our goal.
Okay.
Board member,
Thank you.
question.
Proceed, Member Adams.
Okay. You got the number, you have a 97% almost reached goal here. Would you have any figures you could share on the callbacks to correct some of the issues about installments that didn't go, exactly as planned? Do you have some numbers on that you might be able to share at some point in time? Not today, of course, but it would be nice to see, what, how that work went, because I'm quite sure 97% everything just didn't go, hunky dory. I'm one of them, but I'm just saying, and but I'm just curious. I would like to, if you have that, that would be very helpful going forward.
Yes, of course. Yeah, we are out there inspecting the vendors' installs, and we definitely come across issues. We try and handle those issues if they're minor while we're in the apartment. But we do have something we could share or put together on how we're doing with the inspection of those installations.
Well, point of reference is just in my particular building, we had 18 callbacks because they were not properly installed. But our carpenters who took a course to do the work actually came back with our maintenance people, and they did the cleanup as far as correcting that we had here. It was not the vendor, not at all.
Cal, this is Paula Gavin. My notes from our brief in June were that there were, the goal was 22,000. Could you explain the difference between the 22,000 and the 17?
Yes, there was other than NYCHA funding expected, but that was reduced. When that happened, the target was reduced to 17,000.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, member.
I seem to have missed something because I think when we were at the Q&A, item 22 was being removed.
Yes, Member Gonzalez. Member Gonzalez, may I interrupt? Item 22 was removed, but another, you got an email where we had changed numbers. So this, I don't remember what number this was. This might have been 24, but
It was originally 24.
yes.
And 24 is going to be something new as well.
No, the old 24
Right.
was changed to 22 because 22 was withdrawn from the calendar, which you do not see the old 22 because it's not on the calendar.
Right. So what's good? And 24 will now be replaced with something else.
24 was replaced with what was 42, which is why there are now 41 items on the calendar. So the old 42 was made 24.
Okay.
Okay. Is that any other questions? If not, we will proceed with the calendar. Thank you, Cal.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cal. This is item number 23. It's seeking ratification to award a contract with First Quality Maintenance, also known as Alliance First Quality, for cleaning services commenced on April 8th, 2020 through January 7th of 2021. Various developments citywide in the amount of $38 million. Item 24 is seeking to award authorization to award a requirement contract with Sahara Construction Corporation for replacement and repair of roof fans, which was commencing on October 15th of 2018 and on through October 14th of 2021. This includes, but is not limited to, furnishing of all labor, materials, equipment, insurance, incidentals, requirement for the replacement of repair of roof fans as required to ensure proper operation. In this time, this is also correcting a misstatement, and that's what I just read. It's basically changing it from furnishing all labor, materials, and equipment to furnishing all labor, materials, equipment, insurance, and incidentals. So it's updating the contract to more align with the actual scope of the work as it appears in the contract. The amount is $375,330.06, and it's various Bronx developments. Items 25 through 41 are seeking approval for funding increases. Item number 25 is requirement contract to award with Monitor Elevator Products, LLC, for the purchase and delivery of elevator switches. This commencing, it says remainder of the 3-year term. It commenced June 1st, 2018, continuing on through May 31st of 2021. The amount of $37,061.47. This is various developments citywide and Long Island City Warehouse. Item number 26 is a contract awarded to Sahara Construction Corporation for sheetrock repair and replacement. Commencing on May 23rd, 2019, continuing on through May 22nd of 2022, in the amount of $860,000. It's for various Bronx developments. Item number 27 is a contract awarded to Earthlink General Construction Incorporated for plaster restoration. This contract commenced May 6th of 2019 and continuing on through May 5th of 2022 in the amount of $5,018,940, and it's various Bronx developments. Item number 28 is a contract with Metro City Renovation Incorporated for repair and replacement of apartment entrance doors. Commencing on October 22nd of 2018 and continuing on through October 21st of 2021. Various developments in Manhattan in the amount of $1,708,147.89. Item 29 is a contract awarded to EIA Electric Incorporated, a service of electromagnetic locks. It's commencing on August 14th of 2018 and continuing on through August 13th of 2021. In the amount of $126,743.30 at various Manhattan developments. Item number 30 is a contract with Hertz Electric LLC for exterior lighting repair and replacement, which includes mechanical time clocks, commencing October 15th of 2018 through October 14th of 2021. It's an amount of $1,564,758.41 at various Manhattan developments. Items 31 and 32 are for wood floor repair, and refinishing. The first 31 is with Palan Construction Incorporated, and the contract commencing October 17th, 2018, continuing on through October 16th of 2021, in the amount of $218,223.01 in various developments in Brooklyn. Item 32 is with Bagyani General Construction Incorporated. The contract commencing on November 13th, 2018, continuing on through November 12th of 2021, in the amount of $63,789.29 at various developments in Queens and Staten Island. Items 33 through 36 for removal and installation of vinyl composition floor tile in apartments. Item 33 is a contract with JP Handa Construction Incorporated, commencing October 15th of 2019, continuing on through April 14th of 2021, the amount of $50,000 for developments Throg's Neck Houses, Throg's Neck Addition, Randall Avenue, Balcom Avenue houses. Item 34 is with Amar Construction Incorporated, commencing October 21st, 2019, continuing on through April 20th, 2021, the amount of $81,530 at Senator Wagner houses. Corporation commenced December 2nd, 2018 through June 1st of 2021 of business houses in the amount of $52,973. Item 36 is with Avec Construction Incorporated. Contract commencing October 9th, 2019, continuing on through April 8th of 2021. The amount of $50,000 for King Towers and Griffin houses. Items 37 through 39, contract with Tower Construction Corporation, mechanical pumping and cleaning. This is item 37. It's the contract that's commencing on December 21st, 2018, continuing on through December 20th, 2021. There is Manhattan developments in the amount of $548,137.37. Item 38 is a contract commencing 2018, continuing through December 9th of 2021. The amount $23,337.10. Various claims to that number developments. Item 39, contract on September 18th, 2021, continuing on through September 17th. September 18th of 2020, continuing on through September 17th of 2021. The amount of $396,000 for various crops developments. Item 40 is the contract award to TR Pipe Incorporated for replacement of vacuum pump units. It's for the 2020, continuing on through July 24th, 2021. The amount of $1 million. It's various crops developments. Item 41 is the contract of M&RR Corporation, including gutters, load rooms, and canopies, commencing October 17th of 2019, continuing on to October 16th of 2022, in the amount of $102,171.45 in various patent developments. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Next, we'll do a quick attendance again for the approval voting. Chair Ross, I can see you.
Present.
Board Member Adams. Board Member Adams, please respond. Okay, thank you, Board Member Adams. Paula.
Present.
Matt.
Present.
Member Gonzalez.
Still here.
And Member Young on the phone.
Present.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Chair, 41 items were presented for board approval. May I have a motion to approve the 41 items? Let's see your name, please.
Victor Gonzalez, so moved.
Thank you. Second?
Go
Board
ahead,
Member Young.
Ms. Young. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Member Young. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you very much. Being that all matters before the board today have been addressed, I have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion.
Board Member Young.
Gonzalez moved. Second?
Second, Matt.
Matt, thank you, Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Noting the end time at 12:28 p.m. Thank you all. The next NYCHA board meeting is scheduled for October 28, 2020 at 10 a.m. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.